Welcome to the Welsh Yogi Podcast.
Welcome everyone to the Welsh Yogi Podcast. Which episode is this? Back to Rupa?
Who's back to Rupa, Rupa?
Oh yeah, for those of you who don't know, Back to Ben has recently been initiated by his spiritual teacher and has been given an additional spiritual name. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
So instead of additionally, as well as Ben, before we used to call him Back to Ben. Now, at least on this podcast, probably most of the time we'll refer to you as your
spiritual name,
which is Back to Rupa.
Back to Rupa.
Das.
Back to Rupa Das.
Yeah.
And Back to Rupa, it means Lord Chaitanya. So people might not know who Lord Chaitanya is. Lord Chaitanya is an incarnation of Krishna, an incarnation of God that appeared 500 years ago in Bengal, in India. And he descended in the form of a devotee to give love of God, the highest perfection of human existence, to the lowest of the low, basically.
Yeah, because because I have the same spiritual master as Holiness Shivaram Swami. When he gave you a name, he quoted the verse Panchatattvamakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupas Svarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Kam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam. And in that the name Bhakta Rupa appears in there, isn't it? How the absolute truth manifested as five, the Pancha Tattva, the five truths. Bhakta Rupa, he came as the form of a devotee. Bhakta Svarupa, Bhakta Avatara, Bhakta, and which means a devotee, and Bhakti Shaktikam, and his energies.
Energies.
It's the absolute truth, experiencing what it's like to engaging in a loving relationship with himself.
Yeah, which is like a pretty far out name. And there's a das at the end, which means servant. So it's servant of that incarnation, you know. Because isn't it in the Bhagavad Gita? What's the Yada Yada Hidamasya? Is that the verse? Like Krishna he keeps coming down to help those that who want help, and he helps everyone basically.
It's nice saying about Rupa because it could mean a few things, and it can mean Rupa Goswami, who's one of the great teachers of Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
Bhakta Rupa. I guess it could also mean probably because Bhakta is devotion, Bhakta Rupa, or devotee, isn't it? It's not Bhakti Rupa, but anyway.
Yeah, it could be form. Rupa means form.
Yeah.
And I always like art. I'm into my form. So I'm a devotee of art. I could say that, but it's probably not. Yeah. So back to Rupa in the house. We've got Gopal Roy.
Yeah.
Who's
Gopal Roy Das. And what episode are we on now?
This is episode 24, like the popular TV show 24.
I never saw it.
Me either. But if our episodes were an hour long, then it would be a full day of Welsh Yogi Podcast, but they're not.
Alright.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not funny. So we're reading Mantra 15 of Sri Upanishad, which is we were talking about this earlier. It's Shruti. Shruti, which means it's like a. Well, maybe you're better qualified to explain what Shruti means, because
go on.
I can't really figure it out. It means like I don't actually know. I do know, but I don't know how to explain it. So
Shruti is sort of direct Vedic sound, and then you have something else that's called Smriti, which are sort of personal realizations of those who have heard that Vedic sound. Does that make sense? So. Yeah. You have the original sort of spiritual teachings that was given to Lord Brahma, the original engineer of this universe. And then from the other sort of experiences, realizations, or histories, then you have what's called Smriti. Which is why Srila Prabhupada, in his mission to disseminate Bhakti Yoga all over the world, chose to translate Sri Upanishad, because a big point of that is because of this verse that we're going to talk about today. Because in this particular verse, which
page 92 if you're at home.
Page 92. If you need a copy of Sri Upanishad, give us a message.
We'll shoot
Harin
one.
Manina Patrena. So this is a Shruti verse that proves that the absolute truth in the ultimate issue is a supreme conscious entity. You get some different schools of thought that is the supreme absolute truth some sort of impersonal energy? Does it contain consciousness and personality? And from this Shruti mantra here, as well as in many other places, these are evidences that actually no, the source of everything is supremely conscious. So this actually, and any strong spiritual practice will generally have Shruti as evidence, sort of thing. So this is like in the courtroom, you'd present different evidences to back up your argument. So this is particular verse and discussion is proof that there's a supreme conscious being behind everything. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Like a lot of people, they talk about how, like, the universe. You touch my feet for? Call it
There's
out.
an accent.
It's an accent. Okay. No, like people say, "Oh, the universe guided me." Stuff like that. You hear people saying that?
Yeah,
like,
you say it.
I say that, but I'm just talking about generally. Like normal people say it a lot. And if something's guiding you, then it has to be conscious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like.
Otherwise, it's just cold laws.
Yeah.
Like it's just cold, like meaningless laws. Even for something to have meaning, you should have consciousness behind it. Meaning means there's a plan. Plan means there's a plan maker.
Huh.
Right?
It's deep, but like there has to be like you say it like cold laws though. For some people, it is just cold laws. I'm reminded of, isn't it? Yayatamam prabhajante.
Yeah.
As those who surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. That's what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. It's like if people aren't open to the universe, inverted commas, if you're not open to Krishna or open to receiving these messages from the universe, then the world is just cold laws. Like if you observe it scientifically. Is that right? Or am I just talking nonsense? A little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you say there's laws that help provide the arena, but there's something acting within those laws, and that's the conscious living entity. There's someone experiencing these laws. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then that's where the personal aspect comes in.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just like a video game that's playing itself.
Exactly. Oh yeah, it's just
Yeah, for us to even experience and sort of interact with this world, and we feel like we're free, aren't we? Like we feel like we can move around, like.
Yeah, you're experiencing,
so obviously there's some kind of conscious element within this video game, even if it was all just some kind of simulation. Like
because there's a video game and there's experience of the video game. So even if you just had, I don't know, I used to like my wrestling computer games.
Yeah.
And if you have something like, the Royal Rumble or something and if the character you were playing got thrown out, then for the rest of it you were just forced to watch the computer just fight itself, sort of thing.
That's boring, isn't it?
Exactly, but so it's not.
Did you watch it as well?
Were you happy with his part?
I just quit. I would. I don't know.
We had to get a championship. You gotta play the story out.
Oh, you were that guy.
But it's just you can't just have. So for there to be genuine experience, there needs to be a conscious living being there. Does that make sense? You don't just. I don't know how we got on this. You want to know laws.
Sorry, I just dragged the cart to the left. I guess we can just jump onto the English if you think. For mantra 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you know who's speaking this? Because it now seems like someone is addressing.
No, no.
So
my our spiritual master also said he doesn't know who's actually speaking Sri Upanishad.
Wow. It's quite adds like a layer of mystique, isn't it?
It is, because it is interesting. Because now this part, I mean, whether you say it's the personification of Ishopanishad, because they're also getting into a different phase of Ishopanishad now. So up until this point, like if you like in the verses beforehand, they were talking about the absolute truth.
Yeah.
He has, transcendental name, form, qualities. He walks, does not walk.
Yeah.
Pranamidam, pranamidachite. Many universes manifest from the complete whole.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into there's a mood shift now for these
Yeah.
last few verses where it's an address.
Yeah.
Where whoever is speaking, there's a nice point you brought up, whoever is speaking is now asking
For
the absolute
benediction,
truth. That's translated here as the Lord.
Yeah.
Asking, okay, please reveal yourself.
Wow. Because that's how like traditional, at least like I guess Vedic prayers, it starts off with some like level of glorification, isn't it?
Mm.
Like these are your attributes. This is why you're great. XXX. And then it comes into like an appeal, isn't it? Like then you have to ask for something. Is that how like a traditional prayer works? Like Vedically speaking, that's what from my understanding.
Yeah.
Like so this seems like that, isn't it? Like the previous verses, they're sort of, I guess, extolling the greatness of the Supreme, but not even actually. I don't know. It's beyond me, to be fair. Beyond my pay grade.
Yeah, well, now it's interesting. Like so far the verses have almost been talking to us as a reader, and now the verses are talking to Krishna.
Interesting. So it says, "O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by a dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee."
This is why it defeats, because if we're all one, if we're all God, then why do we need to ask for this covering to be removed? If we're all the supreme potent, we should be able to remove it ourselves. Huh?
Covering, yeah. It's interesting as well, because I think in the purport it talks about there's different like levels of covering, isn't there? Like there's gross covering that goes to subtle covering in one sense. So like the gross covering is like this body which is made up of physical elements, and the senses and all of these different kind of aspects of the body, and then the subtle it gets more subtle, gets into the mind, gets into the intelligence, and then the false perception of who we think we are, the false ego, the false identity, the ego. So like these are coverings of the soul, and they get more and more subtle.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like like when your mood's down, you feel you're covered?
Oh yeah.
And when you're more uplifted, and when you've had when you're feeling more spiritual, awake, you do feel uncovered.
Yeah.
When you're the more depressed, you feel like there's like a cloud hanging over you, and
it's like a thick, dark, like a darkness, isn't it?
Yeah. And this prayer is interesting because it's asking, I don't want to see this. I want even to remove this Brahman effulgence.
Yeah.
So now, even when I've attained a level of spiritual realization where I've understood I am spirit and everything is, I've realized the spiritual quality of everything, but still, I want this to be removed, and I want to see the beautiful face of the Supreme Lord. And that's what that's what Prabhupada talks about in the purport. He gives examples of how he quotes Bhagavad Gita 7:7, Mata Paratram Nanyat, that Krishna explains everything is like pearls are strung on a thread, everything rests on him.
We talked about it in episode 22 as well, I think like 2 episodes ago. Go back and listen if you want. But yeah, that's what you're saying though, is this Brahman effulgence. So you get through all of these gross coverings, the body, the mind, the intelligence, the ego, and these are still all within like the material sphere, within the video game, so to speak. But then once you break out of that video game, there's another covering, is this Brahma Yotir. It's like this all-pervasive light, isn't it? And it says in the purport as well that this light is
even all pervasive in the material world, isn't it? And all light is a reflection of.
All light is like a reflection of Brahma Yotir. This is what I wanted to ask you about actually. In the purport, it says that that Brahman is in the front, in the back, in the north, in the south, in the east, in the west, overhead and below. In other words, that supreme Brahman effulgence spreads throughout both material and spiritual skies. So like it's everywhere. This light is everywhere, right? So, and it's Prabhupada then goes on to say in the purport that light, any light within this world, any electrical light or the sun or any kind of light, is just like a kind of a how does he say it? Like it's like almost like that.
It's like a reflection of this Brahman effulgence.
Yeah. So like everything is light, but we perceive all of the darkness, all of the material energy that's covering this light, but some of the light pokes through to illuminate. But everything in this material world is darkness.
You can imagine if you take. I was thinking it like, you know, when the temperature drops, how cold you get.
Oh yeah.
You know, if you take the sun out of this world and the things that are sort of placed within it, because it's described as almost like a coconut material, because it's also surrounded by like hard shells, you know.
Yeah, different.
So within this coconut of the universe, and this is just one universe of billions, you have these little lights that have been placed in there.
Yeah. You
know. Now take the sun out and everything, and just put the universe just as its bare sort of, just what it is. It's raw. The
ingredients of it. Yeah.
It's so cold
dark.
and dark. It's completely dark, and it's just like it's the level of cold is, it can't get any colder, right? Because all coldness is like an absence of heat.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a you can't conceive of it.
Yeah, it's like
does that make sense?
Because for some reason, like I'm correlating heat with life, isn't it? Like when the body dies, it goes cold. When that spark of consciousness leaves.
Yeah, because you're a spark. What did you say last time? More brilliant than a million suns.
Yeah, the spark's more brilliant than a million suns. It's really interesting. Like and that's what that Omagyanita Marandasya, isn't it? Omagyanita Marandasya Ginanjana Shalakaya Chakshudum Litamyana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in this dark ignorance, isn't it? And the spiritual master lights.
Opened my eyes with transcendent knowledge. The Shastra Chakshush. But you know that, yeah. And that's why when we start to realise our spiritual nature, that's what the message is. Because all happiness, material happiness, just pales in comparison then. Because if one actually has realisation, and this is just the Brahman effulgence, there's deeper realisations which Sri Upanishad is directing us to, but even the Brahman effulgence, if you really understand that I am more brilliant than a million suns, then all of a sudden, your Costa coffee and it just seems completely, in comparison to that, is...
Yeah, because I guess when you put perspective on, like if you put a real perspective on things, a lot of like modern day issues and stresses and strains are actually tiny, Like I think we talked about it before with the vat. If you get a pint of water, maybe someone hasn't heard it, so I'll just say it again. But if you have a pint of water and you put a spoon of salt in that pint of water and drink it, it tastes horrible. It's like
have you done that?
Yeah, probably like back in the day for a laugh, or even seawater.
Do you remember when kids used to like? You used to put the top. David puts the lid on the salt really lightly. So when some kid puts his salt on, he tips the whole salt over all his chips.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, we'll leave it there, shall we? No, so you got a pint of water, you put a spoon of salt in it.
Tastes horrible.
Tastes hanging. And but if you get like a swimming pool full of water and put a teaspoon of salt in it, you drink it and it tastes okay. It maybe even enhances the taste of the water. So I guess the message is like perspective. So like if you're going about life just with like sort of a limited perspective, what you've been taught, what you see on BBC News and whatever is in your immediate vicinity, then you're just sort of seeing life from like a pint-sized perspective. So any problems that come your way, it ruins your day. Like it ruins the taste of the water. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas if you read these like wisdom literatures that tell you that there's unlimited universes and that your spark of consciousness is as powerful as a million suns, and all of this like this knowledge which is actually putting perspective on the reality of who you actually are deep down, then whenever these sort of mundane problems come along, there's teaspoons of salt, because your perspective is broader, they don't like make you suffer. You know what I mean? As much, because you can just tolerate it because you realise it's just sort of a blip in eternity.
Yeah, and that's philosophy.
Mm.
You go into a plane, everyone looks so small.
Yeah.
You get perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's another interesting point that Prabhupada goes in later in this purport on this verse, because he gives a hierarchy of, I guess you can call them like transcendentalists. But he talks about there's karmis who work in this world and just try and enjoy basic material enjoyments. Then he says, sorry.
No, I was just thinking, like, you play it because everyone's heard of karma, like cause and effect. So you play this system to try and get as much happiness as you can out of it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's real. That's a real karmi.
Yeah.
Like today, most of us just go with the flow and just whatever our senses encourage us to do, we do.
Yeah.
But according to Vedic civilization, someone who's into karma,
yeah,
he'll know how the world works. He'll be able to play the game of what activities to perform in order to get the best karma, based on scripture. But then you have karmis, and above that you have the jnanis. So they're the philosophers, They work out this world by philosophically analyzing it, almost like philosophical spiritual scientists who look at the material elements of the world. They look deep into different philosophies. I guess modern times close things are like you had Aristotle and Socrates and these people who would examine these things.
Jnana is like knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's people who are like, they try and develop knowledge, cultivate knowledge to understand ultimate reality. Is that?
Yeah.
In one sense. So that's one layer. So
they're all searching for ultimate reality, all searching for the absolute truth.
Yeah, yeah.
But then above the Gyanis is the yogis.
Yeah.
They perform, and Prabhupada also in the purport he talks about the end of the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
Oh yeah, 647.
So the 6th chapter talks all about yoga, and in 46 and 47, Krishna also gives these different categories of transcendentalists. And he says a yogi is better than the Jnani, the Karmi, because a yogi or a mystic will actually engage in like more sort of strict sort of practices of yoga in order to come to a higher level of realization.
They do like the sit in the middle of a desert in a ring of fire, that kind of yogi.
Yeah, and they'll have, some of them will have mystic powers as well as fruits of their yoga, and you won't see these even a real Jnani or Jnani. You won't really see them.
They're up in the Himalayas.
Yeah, they can be quite austere.
Yeah, I've heard stories of like some swamis in like the Hare Krishna movement, like Indrajumna Swami.
Yeah.
He's been up to these Himalayan mountains and he's sort of come across these sadhus, these Jnanis, and like he's been like maybe stopped in the middle of the snow and just has a conversation with them, and then by the end of like a 10-minute chat, he looks down and all of the snow around this guy's feet have completely melted and he's just standing on rock, and these people are just walking around in basically like a loincloth, just in a pair of underwear, in the freezing cold Himalayan mountains.
Srila Prabhupada was walking with some devotees, and then they looked into this big lake and they just saw these yogis just walking out of the lake that had been just submerged in there for
a while.
And the devotees were telling his disciples were telling Prabhupada, like, wow, that's amazing. Prabhupada said, it's not such a big deal, we've got boats. Some yogis can fly. Prabhupada said, we've got aeroplanes. These mystic cities are just like the material. They're still material, but they're more on a subtle level. It's like even the Bhagavad Gita was, actually what we're reading is, the Sanjay is speaking to Dhritarashtra, and telling him what Sanjay saw through a type of mystic television.
Yeah, it's like remote viewing, isn't it? Like,
it's Zoom, but without the computers and things.
Yeah, and there's a way, like I've heard
it's a Zoom call.
It's a bit of like a side note, but there was the CIA or something was they were researching remote viewing. Like, I've been speaking to different people about that. Like there's actually methods of tapping into the Akashic records. Like there's actual like bona fide methods of viewing remotely through like your mind, through like subtle.
There's so much evidence of it. A lot of the evidence is from the from when the when the communist regime fell. It's not so the CIA have public. They on television they did a public television announcement saying we have a man who can look through walls.
Yeah.
But people just couldn't really believe it.
Yeah.
So even though it was telling them that, they were just like, oh, I don't think that's true, But there's so much. Yeah.
No, it's cool. But what you're saying is, so you got the karmis, the gyanis, the yogis.
You got these mystics, but still that mysticism only takes you so far. There's different beyond the Brahman realization is Paramatma realization, where you understand a bit more of the material potencies of Krishna. But ultimately, as explained in yoga texts, as explained very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita, especially, for example, this last verse of the 6th chapter, where Krishna has just explained how to perform yoga, how to perform mystic meditation, and he explains that actually the yogic shan, what's the verse? Yoginam api sarvesha matkatinanda atmana sharvan bhajate yamam samayukta momata. The best of all transcendentalists and mystics is the one practicing Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the top rung of the yoga ladder, as according to the yoga authorities themselves, and that's where you get the most full direct experience of Krishna, who is the source of all love, all attractive qualities, and the ultimate abode of our loving propensities of service and love.
And that Bhakti Yoga, it contains all of the other levels within it, right?
All the other levels can only be successful if they have a hint of Bhakti.
Yeah, interesting.
And it's called the yoga ladder because gradually, step by step, it's designed so one comes to Bhakti. So one starts performing karma, but then one starts to understand that actually, even if I get good material results, it doesn't ultimately satisfy me.
And it costs so much like pain and suffering to get it most of the time, right? Isn't it? Like,
yeah, and you
like
up and down in the material world.
Sukha dukkha. But
and then one becomes a bit more introspective. They start to discover more sort of scripture, become a bit more philosophical.
You kind of renounce that material enjoyment to one extent, isn't it? Like, okay, I'm going to get into my meditation now.
Yeah.
I'm going to put down the Cadbury's cream egg and the donut for a little bit.
Yeah, become a bit more, philosophy, like lift your head up a little bit and try and understand the world. Then one becomes more serious, sees benefits to that, and then decides to go more serious, starts practicing yoga, mysticism.
Yeah.
And then when one comes across a bhakta, and if one's heart is ready to receive it, then one can archaically it would be they'd understand they'd get some Paramatma realization, and then they'd engage in Bhakti Yoga then, which is dynamic,
but that's the
spiritual activity.
That's the thing you said, you have to come across a bhakta, and they give you something called the Bhakti Lata Bij, which is the seed of devotion. And back to what we were talking about, Bhakta Rupa, my new name, like Bhakta Rupa Das. Bhakta Rupa himself, like Lord Chaitanya, who is an incarnation of Krishna that came 500 years ago, has given this like amazing benediction that he'll give this Bhakti Lata Bij to anyone who is interested in taking it. Anyone. It could be the lowest of the low. You could be from Port Talbot, the mean streets. Not really, but you don't require this qualification necessarily to have sort of done all of these different mystical things. Would you say that?
Yeah, you don't need to go through the whole yoga ladder.
Yeah,
it's
like a cheat code out of the Matrix, basically.
Yeah, and what the Bhakti Lata seed is, that bij, that is what's called sadhana bhakti. It's the activities of cultivating Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
Then one gets this topmost realization and spiritual experience.
Yeah. And Lord Chaitanya has given the sadhana, the sort of activities to perform to taste this highest thing of all is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, isn't it? That's the Sankirtan movement. So like by chanting is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You can come to like taste the fruits of each level of this, and ultimately the perfection, which is what this verse is talking about. Is, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna, because it is. Sorry, because the perfection is like, I like this fact that Prabhupada is highlighting this purport. Okay, there's this effulgence, but then behind this effulgence is this person. So in the purport, which is the commentary on this verse by Srila Prabhupada, he says the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna is always filled with transcendental bliss. Ananda Maya Bhaya Sant. When he was present at Vrindavan in India 5,000 years ago, he always remained in transcendental bliss. Even from the beginning of his childhood pastimes, the killing of various demons such as Aga, Baka, Putana, and Pralamba. So these are the snake demon, the crane demon, the witch, Putana, and Pralamba, were but pleasure excursions for him.
Yeah.
In his village of Vrindavan, he enjoyed himself with his mother, brothers, and friends. And when he played the role of a naughty butter thief, all his associates enjoyed celestial bliss by his stealing. The Lord's fame as a butter thief is not reproachable, for by stealing butter, the Lord gave pleasure to his pure devotees. So everything Krishna does is full of extreme pleasure, even if it might, like stealing butter isn't. Like Prabhupada
what
says,
is that? What is the butter steal? People hear that. What does that mean? So you're saying Krishna, the supreme personality,
he would go into
the perfection of everything, is a butter stealer, thief.
So behind all of reality, ultimately you get to Krishna, who's the source of all spiritual material energies, but his prime principle is that he's all attractive and all attracting, and he hankers to increase his loving exchanges infinitely. So in Vrindavan, Krishna displays pastimes of, for example, he would like to, even though he had so much butter and opulence at home, he would sometimes scamper to other neighbouring houses secretly. He would always be barefoot, and he would, sneaking places, steal butter from neighbouring ladies, and then he would eat it and feed it to the monkeys. And
this is as a child, isn't it? Like, there's a whole you've got to get Krishna book, by the way, people, if you're listening, because Gopal started doing like a little seminar series for us in the morning that's talking all about Krishna book, but like it's got everything on offer. What does it say in the introduction about how it gives you like art and science, and it's like
it's a treasure house of art, science, philosophy, religion. Just that one book, Krishna. It's absolutely brilliant. It's
sublime, isn't it?
Yeah. Because that is Bhakti Yoga as well as hearing about Krishna. I think in modern day society we do have just naturally, I think we all just have a bit of a hang up about God and
religion,
this, that, and the other. But there's these yoga shastras, these yoga literatures, that's what they're meant to gradually build us up to eventually at some point where you have to start practicing Bhakti Yoga, and that's the activities of hearing about the wonderful and supremely attractive activities of Krishna. Then as one hears that, one starts to get more and more attracted, and
unattractive,
experience love.
And you see his lotus face.
Yeah, that's why we need to pray to please remove your dazzling effulgence so I can see your lotus face.
Yeah, I was reading today that lotuses, they only bloom at night time. So if we're unable to see Krishna's face,
daytime.
They only bloom at daytime, yeah. So at night time they close up again, the lotuses. So like if we can't understand Krishna or understand his beautiful lotus-like features, it means that we're living in like a type of darkness, tamas, isn't it? So like if you're hearing all this, I'm personally hearing it too, and it's like, okay, lotus face, like these nice qualities, like trying to hear Krishna book, trying to hear any of these kind of things about Krishna, and it doesn't make any sense. It's because we're still covered by that kind of darkness, you know. So I thought that was quite nice though. So like we have to like sort of come into the daylight for the lotus to blossom out, and for us to be able to enjoy like looking at lotuses, which are pretty beautiful anyway.
Yeah, Prabhupada says here a bit further down that thus Krishna is always engaged in transcendental loving activities with his spiritual associates in the various relationships of Shanta, which means neutrality, Dasya, which means servitorship, Sakya, or friendship, Vatsalya, parental affection, Madhurya, or conjugal love. So, like, these are the things that actually, you know, if we look at it, these are things that give us pleasure. Our relationships with our family, our lovers, you know. So, spiritual life contains all of these things, but in its most raw, pleasurable form with Krishna.
Yeah, like we meet a lot of people on the streets, and yeah, I like to ask them like, what makes you happy? And the majority of people will say, you know, hanging out with my friends, hanging out with my family, being with my girlfriend, my boyfriend.
You need dynamics.
Yeah.
You need relationships. People. That's what. Sometimes you just easily neuter spiritual life. You know, trying to say it's devoid of all these things.
Yeah.
But the dynamic is where the happiness is. You know, for example, if you're really hot outside, it's sunny. You know, when you come into somewhere that's cool.
Oh yeah.
You know, the happiness is the experience of it going from hot to cold.
Yeah.
It's the dynamic. You know, if once we're cold at a certain temperature, then after a while it doesn't. So it's the changes that's where the happiness and the pleasure is.
Yeah.
So spiritual life, or our eternal original environment, has these loving dynamic exchanges constantly. So that's, and Krishna as the supreme source of all of these is the center of it all. Yeah. Don't we gotta try not to neuter spiritual life, and you know, because that'll make the heart hard. Oh yeah, you know, it's none of. It's not. You know, either it makes the heart. It can make the heart hard by getting rid of all of our loving propensities and all pleasure, by saying like, oh yeah, I'm spiritual, so I don't do this, I don't do that, and I don't do this. And it can also make you proud. Oh yeah, I'm spiritual, so I'm above everyone else. You know, when real spirituality breeds a type of deep humility.
Yeah, and connection to everyone, and on like a much deeper level. Sounds good. Well, that was really nice. So I was Mantra 15. Do you think we pretty much covered most of it?
I think we covered the main points that Prabhupada talks about in the purport. He talks a bit about Paramatma. There's different kinds of different kinds of super soul, which I thought were quite interesting, but he says Garbhadakshayi Vishnu, Karnadakshayi Vishnu, Ksharadakshayi Vishnu. There's different Vishnus, but it's just these are, you know, this is Sri Upanishad. I think once we go through Sri Upanishad, I think they're going to enlighten us about the Mahabharata, which will set the scene for the Bhagavad Gita,
that's the
Srimad
plan.
Bhagavatam. So all of these is so, like, spiritual life is, you know, I'm just so grateful for all of these, you know, textbooks that you can put into practice and read and is so authorized. You know, it's not just like I go to some yoga teacher and they just tell you something that they've pretty much made up and maybe they heard from someone on the internet. You know, it's you gotta. I'm very grateful that I've stumbled across a genuine article. You know.
Yeah, we got that Bhakti Lata Bij. It's all mercy. All mercy. So yeah, if you guys want, you can plant a Bhakti Lata Bij in your heart, and that would be great.
Yeah, get in touch. Yeah, I mean, we're going to start retreats soon.
Yeah.
You know, I've been looking at different places for a retreat. I looked at this nice place in Crickhowell. There's a few.
Bit of nature, bit of meditation.
Yeah, there's a real nice
food.
like mansion place in Pennard. But it was a bit expensive, so it'd have to we just want to cover the costs. But maybe it was a bit too opulent. It was like a palace, I think maybe we'll find a nice little cozy sort of home vibe. Maybe a few cabins, beautiful nature scenery where, people will get there Friday night, maybe evening. Everyone settle in. We'll have a little kirtan. Saturday and Sunday we'll have workshops, prasadam. Like a bhakti yoga retreat.
Yeah.
With
So
kirtans
musical meditation, good food, good people.
And then Monday every night off.
And back to the grind. But no, that's cool. That's exciting. So there's retreats in the future. Like you said, Mahabharat, we might be going somewhere. We've only got a few more mantras left now, is it? 16, 17, 18. Three more episodes now on the Shrirsha Upanishad.
Yeah, we should do a podcast marathon and get them done.
Should we do it right now?
What time is it?
It's 4:00. It's quite late.
Yeah, maybe we should do another podcast. Do a podcast every day now until.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you. It's been back to Rupa and Gopal.
Jai, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Madhya Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Madhya Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Gaur Bhakta-vrinda